This current age of man is not the first consciousness ever to walk the earth. Far from it. We come way down the list. These previous older civilizations, they didn't put up the same kind of self-defeating roadblocks. Their culture was different. Lemuria, Atlantis, Reptilian, Pleiadian, others whose name we may never know. The evidence, and there's plenty of it, suggests that these previous ages of humankind, they knew a great deal more about consciousness and how to work with it than is generally understood by those who you see in the world around you today. A lot of people would argue that there is a global conspiracy by a hidden elite to dumb us all down and distract us from this kind of thing. And those arguments are all too true, but they are a story for another day. Talking of stories, if Star Wars began Hollywood's efforts to leak the truth of consciousness, then the same idea, it took a significant step further when they released The Matrix. Protagonist Neo is offered a blue pill that will put him back to sleep inside of the Matrix, where his consciousness will then, like the rest of humanity, remain trapped forever. You've seen it in 1,000 fairy tales. But then, what actually happened? Neo took the red pill, the one that will keep him awake, but truly awake, down here, where he will indeed be led on a journey all the way to the bottom of that Matrix rabbit hole. But wait, isn't there something at the back of your head saying, this all sounds a little bit familiar? It should be. Don't you get the feeling that you've heard it somewhere before? Now, a lot of people, a lot of mystics, would argue that a fact like that is itself immersed in the consciousness of all things, and that's what you're patching into. In fact, you don't need to look anywhere near that deep. Just look at the New Testament of the Bible. And believe me when I say I'm no holy man and I'm not about to hit you with a pile of religion, okay? But it is here, again, we find another young hero who's pushing against the odds as he tries to unravel the mysteries of life, not for himself, but on behalf of the entire human race. Ditto Luke Skywalker's rebellion, ditto all living souls trapped to sleep within the Matrix. In each instance, we find a human race being mass deceived by a dark, sinister and unseen power, whose very existence is defined by its own efforts to ensure that every single one of these people remains shrouded in ignorance. Now, we all know how that story ends, but in case you did sleep through the last 2,000 years and you missed it, the hero defeats all that is pitted against him until finally dark forces close in all around him on such an impossible scale that even he must surrender to his fate. Betrayed by his closest friend, he's executed, and they think it's all over. But it isn't, is it? Because even now, our protagonist has one final move left to play on the great cosmic chessboard. He awakens his consciousness. He expands his consciousness to realize he's no pawn on that board. Not a knight, a bishop, not even a king. He's something much, much more than the board itself or even the two players. He transcends. He looks down on the two of them and their frantic efforts for black to master white, for white to defeat black. But he isn't finished yet. He keeps going, transcends even death itself. Yoda, Neo, Christ all share one thing in common. They all gave up something of themselves, surrendered their own consciousness, in part or in whole, that the workings of their limited earthly perspective would give way, allowing their awareness to merge with that of a higher power. Thus, Luke Skywalker, he swaps his orb, or you might argue the Force, it swaps it for him. Yoda raises his crashed starfighter, same difference. But he isn't doing it alone. Neo defeats the Man in Black, but this time he makes it look easy. Christ comes back from the dead, defeating the devil's ultimate weapon of fear, and thus liberating the entire human race. Well, maybe we are still kind of working on that just a little. But you get the gist. I lived on a Navajo reservation for a while up near the Four Corners in Arizona. Not long, but long enough to learn how they had enough of their own stories regarding consciousness, the summoning of spirits, ancestors, walking between the worlds. And it was one of them that summed up this link between consciousness and storytelling when he said simply, "A good story finds he who would be its teller."